He gave it to me.
I gave it to her.
180, 147, and 1400. 1800. All right, so good evening, everyone. The polls have closed in Harris County. We're at 7 p.m. We still have a couple of locations where we've had voters who are excited, that end of evening rush, who are lining up just to make sure their vote gets counted. As a reminder to anyone who might be watching, if you're still at the polls, if you were in line at 7 p.m., your vote can still be counted. However, we have posted the early vote results, both the early vote in-person results and the mail ballot results that we've been able to tally so far. Top line numbers, we've had about 180 or so thousand people vote early, right, over these last 2 weeks. About 147,000 so far, we might even pop 150, who have voted on election day in person, and another 18,000 or so who have voted by mail. To put that in context, we are seeing more in-person voters than we did in 2018, 4 years ago, the last primary election, but definitely many fewer mail ballot voters. And we know they've got until tomorrow to have their mail ballot returned, and over the next couple days we'll see if they're rejected or not. But basically, even with all these new election laws in place, it looks like people came out in force here in person to make a statement about voting, and we couldn't be more excited in Harris County to support them in that effort.
Can you tell us, are you still when you expect ballots to come in? Because as you may know, the Secretary of State said they got notice from you guys. You don't have results within 24 hours per statute, and that's an issue. Can you talk about that?
Happy to give some background. Yeah, so I guess the Secretary of State just came out with some statement before even the polls closed that we wouldn't be able to do anything. As we see, the early vote results are already out and posted. We are receiving already those election night polls that are closing, that will be delivering their drop-off all through the night. We're expecting those ballot boxes back. As we get those ballot boxes, we are posting results, and we'll have update every hour. What the Secretary of State is kind of referring to is there's a 30-year-old law that says basically 24 hours is what you got to turn in everything you get on election day. 30 years ago, how elections were conducted and the environment elections was much different. So earlier this afternoon, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the Secretary of State met to say, hey, let's talk about this 30-year-old law. Let's talk about what you all need to meet that 24-hour requirement. And what it boils down to is we'll have all of the ballot boxes back this evening. We'll be reporting all of our election day results, but with paper, you get paper jams, you get paper tears, and what we're saying is it's going to take us a couple of days for all those little paper tears, all those little paper jams to get it sorted, because in Harris County, we believe in accuracy over speed, especially in light of all of this kind of election discussion across the nation. So we're here, we've already posted our early vote results, we're posting our election night results, and it's going to take us a couple of days just to wrap up the details.
So you'll be able to comply with the law or not with the law? Because I don't know if you've seen, but the Republican Party and at least one state senator is already talking about how you shouldn't blame the equipment. Can Harris County election officials do their job? That kind of thing.
Again, it's interesting to see those things posted even before the polls close. We are seeing more voters than we did in the last 2018 primary. The election results are already up. We're seeing voters came out in the dozens and literally the hundreds of thousands across Harris County. So our voters came. We're posting the results. I think that statement speaks for itself.
Secretary Scott said that Harris County election officials have indicated to our office that the delay in ballot tabulation is due only to damaged ballot sheets that must be duplicated before they can be scanned by the tabulators here at Central County. Can you talk more about that? How did that damage occur? Was it people putting the sheets in the machine wrong? Were there not enough staff helping them out? Just a little more background on that.
Again, I think a little bit of hyperbole there, but so we are the only county in Texas that has 2 pieces of ballot paper for our voting. That's because we have the longest ballot in Texas, so it takes 2 pieces of paper for you to record all those votes. When you put that first piece of paper in, sometimes people got too excited and tried to put that second sheet of paper right in, and it smudged it a little bit. What that means is our election equipment is so sensitive to secure the integrity of the election that even a speckle, even a small smudge says, you know what, hold off, put that in what we call our reserve or emergency ballot box, and let the judges later make sure that nothing was compromised on that ballot so that it can be duplicated, replicated, and counted again. So all this is saying is any ballot where there was a small speckle or smudge, turn it back into central count. Republicans and Democrats review it together to make sure that the security and sanctity of that vote is preserved in the replicating process. So it's a lot to say, listen, you have paper, you're gonna have paper jams. You have paper, you're gonna have smudges. You you have paper, you're going to have tears, and that's all we're doing is looking through all of those ballots to make sure the voters' vote is counted exactly how they want it.
And I know we've heard today about some of the staffing challenges at some of the polling sites. Does that have anything to do with the issues with the paper and the duplication issue?
As we've seen across Texas, the Democratic and Republican parties, because they decided to do a split primary instead of a joint primary, had difficulty staffing their own locations. I know people saying it's rodeo season, I'd rather go to the rodeo, or it's too cold outside, or my friend doesn't work, so I don't want to vote for them or work with them. So you can see during early vote when we had a joint primary, which means Democrats and Republicans working together to make sure voting was happening, we didn't have a single issue in Harris County. The voters loved it. They were able to vote without difficulty. When you have the split primary on election day, that's been our biggest struggle. Democrats and Republicans bickering with each other, stealing each other's machines, hiding each other's paper. At the end of the day, they were able to help voters, but it is not having any bearing on us being able to return our election results. It's just, again, kind of the drama of primary elections that's getting out there.
And just to be clear, just for people out there that may be worried about this, is there any chance that any of those votes that need to be duplicated, or those ballots that may have been damaged, any chance any of those votes could have been lost?
That's why we duplicate the ballots and replicate the ballots, because without this process, those votes would have to be thrown away. Other states or other counties would say, you know what, if there's a little smudge, just get it out of here. In Harris County, we are going above and beyond by, again, receiving those ballots back in Central Count, having a bipartisan committee of Democrats and Republicans reviewing each ballot, determining the voters' intent, replicating them, double-checking each other, and making sure those votes get counted. So in reverse, without this process, I'd be worried, but with this process, those votes are getting counted.
And was this an issue just at specific polling sites, or was this across the board, across the county?
Again, you got paper, you're going to get paper jams. It happened, without discrimination everywhere across the county. Big polls, small polls, Democrats, Republicans, whatever it may be. If you were voting on paper, you had a paper jam, and that's what we're trying to resolve tonight.
And just a quick follow-up on the staffing. Were there situations, were there sites where there was not an election worker helping people scan it properly and feed it into the machine? In other words, were voters kind of on their own at any of the sites in terms of having to scan it? Maybe that led to some of the issues?
So voters are always the ones who are feeding the ballot paper into the scan, and I want to be careful there. It's the voters that touch their own ballot paper that insert it into the scan so they can be sure, right, that their ballot was taken care of appropriately. Where possible, at voting locations, we advise that judges have someone who stands what we call a scan clerk right by that scan, shows people how to put their paper in, make sure that they see the certification signs that it's been approved. As polls get busy, people are shifting around, but they do have the staff to be at the scan. En español, sí.
Sí, me gustaría tener la reacción para Telemundo Houston, el balance hasta ahora. ¿Cuál es el balance actual sobre este conteo de votos en el condado Harris?
¿El qué?
¿Cómo va el proceso?
Sí, gracias, sí. Pues todo está bien. Hemos cerrado las casillas aquí a las 7. Hay alguna gente que sí ya están, sí todavía están en las casillas votando para terminar a votar, pero ya pusimos las votaciones, los resultados de las votaciones temprano en nuestra cita. Vamos a tener los resultados de Election Day ahorita, continuando esta noche, y vamos a tener un proceso para los boletos que a lo mejor cuando regresaron su boleta había algún problema, alguna con el papel, para duplicar esas boletas para que cuentan para esos votantes.
¿Hasta ahora cuántas boletas tienen hasta ahora? ¿Tienen un conteo ya?
Sí. Sí, desde las votantes para las votaciones tempranos, 180,000 boletas por votaciones temprano, 147,000 de votaciones hoy en día de las elecciones y unos 14,000 de votaciones por correo.
Entiendo que ahí tuvieron que pedir asistencia por parte del secretario de Texas, que estaba revelando a través de un comunicado debido a retrasos. ¿Estos retrasos cuáles son los conflictos que han presentado para este conteo de votos en el condado Harris?
Sí, hay una ley de 30 años que dice que tienes que reportar todo lo que pasó día de las elecciones en 24 horas. Pero las elecciones de hace 30 años fueron muy diferentes que las elecciones hoy. Entonces necesitamos más tiempo, un poco más días para recibir todo, contar todo y verificar que esos boletos que un pequeño problema con el papel o algo, que podemos replicar esas boletas y contarlos como quisieran el votante.
El problema que han tenido básicamente ha sido por tema de boletas.
Sí.
Las boletas han tenido que duplicarlas, o cuál otro conflicto, porque también he escuchado por parte del Partido Republicano que decía que había dificultades en algunas máquinas, ¿cuál?
Eso fue otra rumor, si quieres, que de 20 máquinas había uno que tenía un problema, pero pudieras votar en las otras 19 máquinas. Entonces quiere decir que había muchos problemas y que nadie votó y todo eso es rumor, no es cierto. Tuvimos más votantes que en 2018 para la primaria, y vemos que mucha gente ya todavía no están votando. Todo lo que pasó con los votantes es los votos por correo. Sí hay demasiado menos por las leyes y los cambios de leyes del estado de Texas.
Es decir, básicamente ha sido todo por el tema de las boletas y que han tenido que duplicarlas para realizar ese conteo, ¿correcto?
Sí, para hacerlo como quiso el votante.
Para finalizar, ellos explican que bajo el código electoral, a pesar que fueron 30 años, el hecho de que no se registren las boletas en 24 horas, no se realice el conteo, puede recaer en un delito clase B. Eso pudiese incurrir, según la explicación que dan en el comunicado. ¿Qué pasaría allí en ese caso?
Tuvimos una junta con los republicanos, los demócratas y la secretaria para discutir eso, y todos hemos decidido, es más importante contar todo y contar todo con precisión. Entonces así vamos a hacerlo, contar todo y contarlo con precisión hasta el voto final ya está contado.
En el caso de que no quieran quizás generar algún conflicto por tema de un código electoral, ¿qué pasaría allí?
Que no sé, ¿qué me van a decir? ¿Que no van a contar los votantes que fueron legales, que fueron hechos correctamente? No, vamos a contar todo como quieren los votantes del condado Harris.
One more from me, just to kind of
Yeah,
look
sure.
back on today and then the entire voting process, but especially today. How would you grade it? How would you describe it? Is it better than you expected, worse than you expected? How are you feeling about it?
Anytime I've got more voters voting than the last comparable election, it's pretty exciting in Harris County. But we've gotten a lot of great lessons. This is the first major election in Harris County with our new voting machines, the touchscreen machines, the papers. The first time we've ever had to do 2 pieces of paper. We're learning how to make that system more efficient, how we can educate voters in the future. But the best way for voters to educate themselves is to come vote and tell their neighbors to come vote in May and November and how best to use those machines. See you in an hour. All right. Thank you.
All right, we've just been listening to Isabel Longoria, the Harris County clerk. And here's a statement. Harris County election officials have indicated to our office, referring to the clerk's office, that the delay in ballot tabulation is due to damaged ballot sheets that Longoria was just talking about that must be duplicated before they can be scanned by the ballot tabulators at the central count location. Our office stands ready to